All right, so thank you very much for just giving your precious time
Thank you very
to
much for
talk
having me.
to me and just to tell our audience, our students, how to learn. So basically, can we just start with introduction, who
hmm
you are, what you do, and why I'm so happy that you just found time to talk to us.
Okay, so my name's Richard Simcott, and I'm from the United Kingdom, but I live in Skopje in the Republic of Macedonia, and I really like languages. I suppose that's probably the most diplomatic way of saying that they're my passion in life. I organise conferences about languages, one called the Polyglot Conference, which people can sign up to. We're having the next one in New York, but we've also had one in Budapest and one in Novi Sad, and we're having the next one in New York in October. I also run workshops, polyglot workshops for people interested in language learning and learning from people who have been through the process several times. Also, there's a website, polyglotworkshops.com, and it's somewhere where anyone who's learning languages, they don't need to be a polyglot. That's not the idea. The word polyglot in the title is not to put people off. It's to really show that the people speaking have been through this many times and can identify with the people in the audience who are going through the process. We've already been to Poland twice for these workshops. We did a workshop in Poznan and also in Warsaw, and as well as Berlin in Germany on a couple of occasions. We're going to Budapest at the end of May, but we'll be back in Poland for sure because it's a beautiful country and the people are very welcoming.
Yes, and you can speak Polish quite well as well.
I can speak a little bit of Polish, yes.
Yes, how many languages can you speak?
It's a very difficult question to answer, and it's one that I'm asked very often. I always say that I've studied over 40 languages because speaking really depends on the person listening to you. So before this interview, we walked to this lovely park in Berlin and we spoke in Polish. So would you say I speak Polish?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, then I speak.
Polish is very good.
Thank you. Then I speak Polish. But for me, the important thing is the communication and the human interaction. I actually really like that, and that's one of my main motivations for learning languages is getting to know people in their language. So I learnt Polish because I liked Poland and I liked the Polish people I met. So I wanted to be able to communicate with them in their language and join in their conversations.
How to learn a language? What advice would you give?
So I think, people can get carried away with buying too many things. So I think what I'd say is go to a bookshop or go to a library and look at several courses and pick the one that you identify most with, the one that interests you most. Look at the quality of, of the dialogues or the text. Are they things that you can find interesting, or are they things that maybe you think will help you stay motivated to learn the language? Are they things that are appropriate for your level? Are there things in there that you know a little bit about so you don't feel discouraged? And are there enough things to help to move you beyond into the next levels of the language? And I think once you've found that course that works well for you, and maybe a teacher as well, you can use online teachers or you can use teachers within the country, then if you combine those two things and do a little bit every day, I think that's probably the best advice I can give anyone. I think that it's really that constant studying on a daily basis, whether it's revising something one day because you feel tired or you don't feel you've understood the concept fully or you learnt all the vocabulary, or whether you're moving on to the next lesson. There's no rush. You don't need to feel stressed or pressured. And I think that's one thing people sometimes compare themselves to other people. It's a natural human instinct, and everybody's guilty of it to a degree. But I think that you've got to take a deep breath. It takes time to learn a language. Just do a little bit every day, and you'll soon find that over the months and over a year's time, how much progress that you make when you look back is incredible. If you set yourself goals from the start and say, okay, by this time in 3 months, I want to be able to say things about the weather. I want to be able to talk about my family and where I'm from. And if you set that as a goal, you can then look back when that time arrives and say, okay, I've done that, I've achieved my goal. And you feel confident and motivated then to move on.
All All right, you said that you should choose a course book, but
Mhm.
is it a course? But is it a course book or is it a program, software?
It could be a mixture. You could use something that actually uses all features. So some courses nowadays, especially big languages like English or German or French, or some of these languages have a mixture of approaches. So they'll have a course book. They may have a video course that accompanies it. They may have interactive elements to them online. So whatever works for you, I'd say use that, because you know how you learn best. And I think it's really important to play to your strengths and to what makes you tick. Now, I talked a little bit about finding maybe a teacher to help you in the process. You can use that teacher in different ways. So it's not always good to go to the teacher and look at the teacher to tell you everything. You've got to be proactive in the language learning. So if you don't know what to do, or you're stuck for something, take a lesson that you've been doing and give the teacher one of the roles, and you take the other role, and then swap them. Then look at taking vocabulary from those dialogues and changing it. So if in one dialogue you're talking about the lovely sunny weather, talk about the horrible rainy weather. Talk about what you're going to do in your summer holidays, then talk about what you're going to do in your winter holidays. And change the roles around so that you're using vocabulary from all parts of the book in the different dialogues. And that's a way that you don't feel the pressure of having to speak perfectly, but you've got some sort of guide to take you through the lesson and a structure.
What's the most important thing when you learn a language? Is it vocabulary? Is it grammar, pronunciation?
For me, so the grammar is the skeleton of the language. Without any grammar, the language body can't stand up. But the vocabulary is the meat, is the flesh of the language. And without the vocabulary, your grammar can't really do very much except explain the grammar. So you need a certain foundation in the vocabulary to be able to express yourself, to walk around town, to understand what's going on. So, think about the things that you want to do. And this is why I say focus on something you want to talk about first and build on the vocabulary from that point, because then you can expand outwards. Learn the colours, but maybe you don't need colours like indigo in the beginning. You can start with blue, green, red, yellow, colours that are very obvious, and then build it up. Because if you do them all at once, and you do that for every single topic that you could possibly manage in a language, it will soon become overwhelming. And you talked earlier about the idea of an Everest, building a mountain, and it looks like a mountain of information. So if you're learning about the weather for the first time in a new language, learn about rain, learn about snow, learn about the wind, learn about the sun, and don't worry about hail, sleet, or fog in the beginning, because it may be something that would just aim to confuse you in the short term. But you can add those in later when you get to new lessons and talk more.
All right. And what about mistakes? A lot of people are afraid of mistakes.
I think mistakes are good. You've got to become an active listener in a language. So listen to what people are saying and repeating. So one of the things that I do with people who are speaking to me in my language or in a language I speak very well and they're learning it, is I'll repeat back with the correct grammar, because stopping them in mid-flow sometimes is not helpful. If I hear somebody make, say, 5 mistakes, sometimes then I may make a point and say, okay, I hear that you're saying this, I just want to let you know this is how we'd normally say it. But I don't want to do it in an intrusive way that would stop the conversation or make it feel awkward for the person speaking to me, because I'm really grateful that they've taken the time to learn the language that's important to me too. And so I'd say learn to listen for those kinds of repetitions back. Some people use that method. Some people will interrupt you. And I think what you can do is say, I really appreciate these, constant corrections. Maybe if you hear me make the mistake 5 times, then tell me, and then we can see, so that you learn to get the flow of the conversation as well. So you can always feed back as a learner to your teacher to show them what you like and what works well for you. So I think as a learner, listen, and listen to how people express themselves as well. So you hear people say, if they're not a native speaker of English, to do a mistake. But a native speaker would never say that. They would say to make a mistake. So listen to how the native speaker says it. Visualize that in your mind, and when you're speaking, repeat it in that way.
And what about pronunciation? Because especially in Poland, people are obsessed with near-native-like pronunciation. They would like to be kind of not distinguished from native speakers.
Okay. There are pronunciation is important. I think it's important to be clear. so that you're easily understandable to the widest audience possible. So of course it plays a role. However, you've got to consider what the advantages and disadvantages are of sounding like a native. Sometimes if you sound too native-like, people have very high expectations of you, maybe before you're at that level with the language, and therefore they don't make allowances for how you speak. So if you make a mistake that is a genuine mistake and you offend somebody, if you don't have a bit of an accent that they realise that you're foreign immediately, then people might feel more offended than if you have a foreign accent.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So, and sometimes a foreign accent is charming and endearing. So people like that you're speaking it in that way. And also you want to represent, I mean, we're at the Polyglot Gathering in Berlin right now, and I heard a talk yesterday about this, in fact, sounding like a native. And one other issue is that if you sound too native-like as well, you may misrepresent yourself. So if you're an educated speaker of Polish and you learn English and you don't sound at the same educated level in English, people might not think that you understand certain concepts that for you, or certain things that you've read on, and you know that transfer nicely into English, but actually because of your level of English, and you sound maybe at a high level than you are because of your accent, people then maybe think that you're not as intelligent. And that can happen. These kinds of misconceptions occur, whether we like them or not, but it's part of life. And I think sometimes that's where it can be a problem to have too native a sounding accent.
And when do you think is the good moment to go abroad to the country of the language you want to study? Do you think there is any reason to go there when you are already not even A1, or later?
It can be dangerous. It depends on your native language a lot. So if you only speak Polish and then you go to live in Thailand, for example, you're highly unlikely to come across many Poles living in Thailand. They may try and speak to you in English because they see you as a white person from Europe. So their perception is, okay, if they don't speak my language, they speak English. But if you don't speak English and you're Polish and you just speak Polish, or you're trying to learn Thai, then there'll come a point where they can only speak to you in Thai. This is an issue for native English speakers though, or people who speak English already, because English can very easily become the lingua franca. And so instead of them speaking to you and taking the time to speak slowly, they will turn to English, and you will feel that you need to turn to English, and the relationships will be built on English. And if you go to the country and that's what you do before you've learnt any of the language, it's very difficult to then break out of those circles. We call them expat bubbles, typically. And you live in this expat bubble that's very difficult to penetrate. The only people then that tend to be natives of that place and of that language that you want to learn in that bubble are people who are very good at English, or really want to practice their English. And you're not getting to speak to the people on the street who maybe are not motivated by learning the language. Maybe they have other interests that you share as well. So what I'd say is, it's probably best to learn a good chunk of the language before you go out, the basic grammar for sure, and a good basic vocabulary so that you can communicate on everyday topics before you go out. I mean, we're talking about maybe a B1 level, if the listeners understand what that means. If not, then I can sort of explain a little bit more. It's where you've maybe dominated all of the basic things, talking about the weather, talking about what you want to eat, drink, likes, dislikes, maybe going to the doctors, doing basic things around the town that you do in your language, but then taking that a little bit further and joining them up to make a conversation out of it, so you can have an interactive experience with somebody talking about all those things as a whole, and it's not just blocks of language. So when you get to that kind of level where it's starting to all gel together to form one, language level in your head, that's probably when the time is right to go.
And on the other hand, is it possible to learn a foreign language without traveling, without going to this native country?
Of course it is. You can definitely do it, especially nowadays, because we have wonderful technology that will allow us to watch television or clips, videos, films, read newspapers online. We couldn't do that, 20, 30, 40 years ago. People, and the world's changed as well. I mean, you can actually travel a lot more easily than before. So if somebody left Poland, for example, or Hungary, or one of the before the Iron Curtain was lifted, basically they were saying goodbye to their language and their culture, potentially forever in their eyes. They'd emigrate to maybe the United States or to Canada, and then they would not have any contact with the language. And that's now no longer true because of the internet. So people can live in different countries and still have contact with home, but equally that works really well for people learning the language from abroad. So it's using the same techniques to keep people in contact with their native countries, and you're using their channels to actually develop your language learning. And now we can do teaching online as well, right? So you can even find a teacher from a country that normally your local school or college never offered Mongolian, but now you can speak to somebody in Ulaanbaatar and learn the Mongolian language.
Yes, because these technologies are
Yeah.
really changing the way we are learning languages.
Exactly.
And what about you in technology? Do you use any technology?
For my language learning.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I use all the mediums that I discussed just now. So TV, films, websites, newspapers, online resources. There are some really cool applications as well on smartphones. One that I always tell people about is, so I can show you just briefly on this phone. I have Euronews, and Euronews has an application that you can basically change the news. It has it written and it has a little video, and you can change it in, I think it's 11 languages. So you've got English, you've got German, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, Russian, Ukrainian, Arabic, Farsi, and Hungarian, and Greek. I think they're all the languages that they have at the moment on the application. So you can watch it in a language you speak well, then the one you're learning, you can then watch it again. And you can learn the vocabulary that goes with it. And it's related to news stories, so maybe this is someone who's already gone through the basics, but wants to continue further. So you can definitely push past the beginning phases without going to the language with these kinds of things.
All right, great. And how do you kind of maintain all of the 40 languages?
Okay, so I mean, I studied 40 languages, so I don't particularly maintain all of them. Some of them are just pure interest that I've studied because I was interested in knowing how the language worked. But my daily life consists of 5 home languages. So with my wife and I speak Macedonian. With my daughter I speak French. And then we do homework in English. And then we speak German and Spanish every day for about half an hour a day of playtime and normal activities that we do in any other language, but we just happen to do it in Spanish or German. And then where I live in the Republic of Macedonia, there are lots of foreigners. So I speak to a number of expats in their languages. So I use Italian pretty much on a daily basis, Turkish. In the country itself, there are lots of official languages. It's not just the Macedonian language. There's also Albanian that's spoken, Turkish that's spoken, the Roma language is spoken there. You hear a lot of Serbian and Croatian because of the ties, the cultural and ties to these countries, where films and TV and music, you still get a lot of it from those countries. Bulgarian because it's so close to Bulgaria, Greek because we're so close to Greece. So going on holiday and learning a bit of Greek to go and talk to people is just an easy thing to do. And then for my work, I work for an online social media management agency called eModeration as the head of languages, and that's my day job. And I have a team of polyglots, and I actually give advice on consultation on projects, multilingual projects in social media, and how that would work in real terms. So I come across a lot of my languages in that work as well, having to look at things, look at pages, look at, read things in different languages.
So what's the next language?
So this summer I'm going to go to Riga, and I'll practice Russian because I think there's quite a lot of Russian speakers still around Riga, but I really want to learn some Latvian as well. So yeah, at the moment my Latvian's not so good, but I'll learn a little bit before I go so that I can say basic things, and then when I get there try and speak some Latvian. I like the reaction I get. I did this in Poland when I went to Poland. I learnt very basic Polish and then went there, and the reactions from Polish people was really positive, and people were really happy to speak to me in Polish, and I'm hoping it will repeat the same experience now in Riga.
Oh, for sure. So all the best, the best, speaking and learning more and more languages. And thank you very much for giving us your precious time.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone that's listening.
Thank you.